Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Heart of CX. I'm Joanna Palmer, and as always, with me is Max Ball. Hello, Max. How's it going?
I'm good. How are you, Joanna?
I am doing well. We have to talk about weather. I mean, it's kind of like a requirement.
Yes, yes. What is the weather in your world?
So, weather's turned back nice for a few days. We're in the 70s again, so enjoying
Oh,
the
very
change of weather.
nice.
Yes, yes. How about there?
So we're supposed to get a good rain tonight, and then I heard the three scariest words in the English language if you live in California, which is high pressure system. And we're getting one of those, which, you know, global warming in California means death by pleasant weather. Because what happens is we get all the rain blocked, we get horrible droughts, but that also means it's not cloudy and rainy. It's kind of nice all year. So it's a little bit odd here. But we got a lot of rain early. We're getting some more, and high pressure systems can come and go. It's just sometimes they just come and sit there and send all the rain up to Oregon or Washington. And hopefully that's not what's going on. That this is just one that'll come in for a few days and we'll get some nice weather like you're having now, and then go back to something rainy. Knock wood.
Right, right. Well, I'll keep my fingers crossed for you, Max.
Okay, good, good.
All right. So, what's top of mind for you today? What should we talk
So
about?
I literally, I had a conversation just before we talked with a guy who runs a contact center, and he hasn't been running it for very long. Works
Mhm.
at a very large company, and he was calling to kind of what is the state of the art? Where do things stand? And he started the conversation by saying, when I was 21, my first job out of college, I was installing network solutions, and I installed a lot of them in contact centers. And now I'm back all these years later, and nothing has changed. From what he looked at, the procedures and the processes and the physical layout of the contact center, it was all exactly the same. And it just blew his mind how little had changed. And I think, he has been in this long enough that he started pre-COVID. So I think he was somewhat talking about the world pre-COVID, but I think it somewhat carries over. So
Interesting. Interesting.
yeah,
So, first question I have is how old is this person now? We know he was in contact
yeah.
center.
No, he was not young. He was into his 40s. So it was 20 plus year, probably 25 years.
Okay. Okay, interesting. Interesting because my lens is everything's changed in 25 years, and thinking about where we've been from 1990, what is that, 1997 to 2021, 2022. I would
So
like to think everything has changed.
why don't I talk a little bit about some of the things he observed? Then
Yeah.
you can talk about how they're changed or not. And I think a lot of it is I, I I find the contact center to be one of the most resistant to change organizations in any organization. So I think there's some of that. I do think COVID is truly making changes suddenly happen relatively quickly. But I'll talk about what he was seeing, and there were some specific areas he talked about, and then maybe you can talk a little about how you think that's different. Um, so some of it was just the physical layout and just a bunch of people in cubes and the hubbub and the buzz of a large contact center, and none of that was different. Um, a lot of what he talked about was QM and how agents are being judged and ranked based on somebody who's listening to maybe two phone calls a week. And what a ridiculously small data set that is to be judging people and working on that, the amount of resources it takes to deliver that level of insight into somebody. He was just kind of like shaking his head on that. And that's something that I think there's still a lot of out there. I know of some changes there, and I'd rather have you talk about it first, though. And the other thing was, it was kind of, this one I was a little confused about, because he talked about how much of things were still voice, and yet later he talked about that contact center, and they're starting to really see movement away from voice. So that he was a little bit schizophrenic with his information, but so just kind of, the look and the buzz and the feel and the approach and the mindset, and specifically around QM, and I think that extended to scheduling and some things there, and up until COVID, work from home was another thing he cited, that you weren't. So talk about what you've seen in the past 25 years in general, and kind of touch on some of that as well.
Yeah, and so certainly there are some areas where contact centers are laggards. And I think some of it is once you do one of those large contact center implementations, and just thinking about it 25 years ago, what a heavy lift it was to do a major contact center implementation. And so I think some of it's fear in terms of don't break what's working. Um, and some of it is just the whirlwind and firefighting of a contact center in general. That said, I think as a leadership team, you have to devote some of your time to think strategically on how can we improve the customer experience? How can we improve the employee experience? And we can't continue to do what we've always done. And so, I think that's number one, is what we've always done is the biggest impedance of change in a contact center. And so I'm thinking to some of the things you highlighted here in terms of the buzz, the cubicles, the setup of a contact center is the way it's always been. Yes, true. I think that's true up until the pandemic for sure. And pandemic certainly has accelerated change tremendously in the contact center along with the rest of the world. I think we've quoted Shep Hyken before on saying that the pandemic has accelerated 5 to 10 years worth of change in a short amount of time. And so I do think that we're seeing some rapid changes there, especially with work from home. I think work from home is a really interesting conundrum. And when we were looking at work from home, gosh, 10 years ago, there was quite a bit of resistance associated with work from home in terms of fear of sending agents home, not necessarily because we don't know what they're doing. We've got enough reporting and recording in the contact center to account for every second of an agent's day, or at least be able to ask questions enough when there's anomalies within the contact center statistics. But I think that there was more of a resistance associated with how do you get this set up at home? How do you ensure standard quality of service from a voice perspective, as well as really protecting the environment, ensuring that the environment is such, trying to create that office environment at home. And if we've learned anything over the course of the last couple of years, it's that really doesn't make sense. You can't really create an office environment at home. Yes, you can have an office at home, but inevitably you're going to have dogs barking if you've got dogs. Inevitably you're going to have kids coming in. And we've changed our thoughts on that quite a bit in terms of embracing people for people and understanding that people are imperfectly perfect. And so the dog's barking is just a part of life. And it doesn't necessarily, dogs barking in and of itself does not necessarily detract from the experience. it's how you handle a lot of that, I think, you know?
I think you're right. I think it's, I've been struck lately how humanizing it is to have the
Yeah.
dogs and the kids. And, most contact centers, you're not doing video interactions, but, in particular, when you're doing video there was one of my inquiries I had where the guy's kid was home from school that day, and I like he poked his head up. I waved at him, and we had a 5-minute break where the kid and I had a little chat, and it was just like, oh, this is nice. That's what life is. Life is not, you know, cubicles and safe boxes where nothing ever happens.
That's true. And remember those days that were bring your kid to work day prior to the pandemic?
Yeah,
Now
yeah,
it's your kids are part of your everyday, depending on whether they go to school or not. But they come in, they see what you do, they overhear what you do, and it is they're more in tune with what your life looks like as that professional, not just as that mom or dad, for
yeah.
sure.
Very
So
true.
So I do agree. I think that there's that humanizing element there that really helps with connection as we think about some of the themes we've talked about most recently with empathy, with really
Yeah,
deepening those relationships. It's just bringing your whole self
yeah.
to
I think
your
that's
to work. Yeah.
yeah. I think it's really spot on. And I think that we're at an inflection point with technology, with the cloud, because up until very recently, people who are deploying cloud systems, there's some leading edge people, but
Yeah.
the majority, they're doing like for like. They're taking what they had before and they're putting it into the cloud. And it may have been a little easier to integrate something, or maybe this new QM system's a little slicker than the other one, but basically they've been doing what they've been doing. But now AI is really starting to kick in, and there's, I guess, bots. You can have a cloud-based bot sitting in front of a premises-based system, so that doesn't matter. But when you start getting into agent assist and some of the analytics, you're not going to be able to do that stuff or do it nearly as well with a premises-based system. So I think we're about 2 years, and the digital stuff would be, the digital stuff would be hard to do on premises. So I think we're about 2 years from, I think we're starting to see being able to do things in the cloud that you can't even think of on premises. And I think we're a year or two from a different universe based on which you have.
Yeah. Yeah. And underlying that AI piece in terms of leveraging cloud-based AI. That's learning engines are not just learning from your individual instance, but learning across the ecosystem. I think you're at a distinct disadvantage in the AI world if you're not leveraging a
Right.
cloud-based
Yeah.
system because all it's learning from is your individual instance and not the entire ecosystem. And that doesn't mean that you don't have differentiated services, that you can't differentiate your service from your competitors. That just means that you're providing the best possible service that you can, and that the AI engine is much more accurate in next best action based on a larger sample size.
Or understanding what you're saying or getting intent and all of that. And so is that going to give significant advantage to the bigger players who will have the bigger data sets to work from? How does a smaller AI vendor compete when they're not going to have hundreds of millions of records?
And I've been wondering that same thing, Max. Is the winner in the AI battle the one with the most customers, with the most conversations that it's able to analyze and consume so that it can create better models? I, I don't know. I tend to think that way, but again, I think it's almost time to have another AI conversation with an AI expert.
Yeah, probably wouldn't be a bad idea. Yeah, it's a very different sort of world, and yeah, I, that's going to be an advantage. But I assume, if you're a small cloud-based AI company, that, and you're finding ways to make your engine smarter or have better sentiment analysis or something. I mean, those
Right.
guys have got to be putting something in there that's a special sauce, or they're not going to be around.
Right, right. So speaking of AI and thinking about it beyond the box, um, you had mentioned something during the early part of the introduction of this conversation that quality management is one of those areas that seems a bit antiquated, that hasn't changed over the course of the last 20, 25 years. And so as we think about how do you really enable change for quality management without throwing just a ton of labor on it? I think quality management was one of those casualties that happened in terms of the reduced number of sample size and quality departments overall getting cut as part of the cost cutting measures that we saw during the call center phase, where the call center was looked at as a cost center, and so it
Right,
was
right.
cut. Where else can we cut? Well, quality management seems like a logical place to cut. But with advancements in the quality management software, with advancements in having analytics infused in your quality management processes and systems, I think that there's a lot that's changing there with enabling a better sampling, leveraging AI of what those conversations
Yes.
look like, and providing better feedback by using your technology more intelligently. And again, it's something that I don't think will ever be scalable with an on-prem system.
No, I agree. I agree. And what'll be interesting is as sentiment analysis gets better, do we get to a point where, um, I can, who I'm going to do QA against becomes very different because now, I get my reports every week, and here's my top 10% of agents. I'm going to look at them for best practices, but I've got almost nothing to coach them and to, give them lollipops. And then I've got an unwashed mash in the middle, and then I got a bunch of guys in the bottom that I look to work out. And at that point, the QM process is a very different process than,
Yes.
okay, I need, one reviewer for 6 agents, and let's go, 2 calls a week. Everybody gets them, and this is all you get. There's
Yep.
a whole new world opening up.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And it's so interesting looking at analytics and really understanding what that optimal feedback loop is for your different contact center personas. So just like you've got customer personas, um, there's also those contact center personas that you need to think about, and understanding each one of your agent types and understanding what's optimal there from a quality perspective, as well as a scheduling perspective and all of the other
Yeah,
components,
right.
I think is absolutely critical.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like that was a good conversation.
I do too. I do too. Well, thank you so much for bringing this one to the table today, Max. It was fun for sure.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's nice to have something come up and just talk it through in the moment. It
Yes,
makes
yes,
for a fun
absolutely.
afternoon.
Absolutely. All right, until next time, thank you. All
Thanks. And thanks everybody out there. Take care.
right.